The real reason that the original Blair Witch Project worked when it first came out had nothing to do with the movie or how good the movie was itself, but it was actually the marketing campaign. See, what they did way back then could never be done again. So I already think that this movie is in trouble. So I'm sure most people by now have heard that Jason Blum and Blumhouse, along with Lionsgate, are rebooting the Blair Witch Project. For me, I feel like this thing is already kind of doomed because in reality, it wasn't so much that the movie was great and that's why it sold well and that's why so many people went to see it. It was actually the marketing campaign that drove people into the theaters. You see, like back then, right? I believe it was 1999 when the movie came out. The internet was in a very different place. You couldn't just go and Google something, right? They ran with this marketing campaign that these five teenagers or however many it was, they were missing in the woods, and they marketed this as a real missing persons case. And back then you couldn't just go to Google and look these people up. You couldn't go and check for their Instagram. I mean, today an Instagram search would pull up in 2 seconds and you'd already find that this whole thing was fake. Back then it was much easier. You see, like, for one, when you think about found footage films, found footage really wasn't a big thing. I mean, you had like B-level films like Cannibal Holocaust, things like that. Found footage film was not mainstream at that point. So really, Blair Witch Project was the first one to be a mainstream found footage film. So with that being the first one, the filmmakers really capitalized on that because most people did not know about found footage. So they were able to use this camera setup, the camcorder and videotape and five teenagers in the woods, and market this thing as if these teenagers really disappeared at the hands of this Blair Witch. If you look back at the history, if you were to just like Google it now, you'll see that they ran missing person ads in newspapers and magazines. They were at festivals, music festivals, giving out flyers of missing persons with the actors' pictures on them. They were running commercials. I believe even at one point, Sci-Fi Network ran a fake documentary about the five teenagers, how they went missing in the woods. I mean, they really drove this thing home. They even had the website of the five teenagers missing and have you seen them and all this stuff going on. Like, the internet was in a different place, the world was in a different place, and we were much more gullible. It was easier to convince people that there were these missing teenagers out there. And that's what drove people into the theaters. And if I remember right, the way they really drove it home was they basically claimed to have found that footage and they were going to release it into theaters so that people could go and watch the movie and then help find these teenagers. And then at the end of the day, they would just scare the shit out of them with the ending of the film. So in reality, that could never work today because when they reboot this thing, when Jason Blum puts this Blair Witch Project movie out, he's ultimately going to have to market this to me as any other movie coming out by Blumhouse or any other horror movie that's coming out by any other production company or distributor. They're going to have to just market it as a Blair Witch Project. They're going to have to tell us from jump that, this is a Blumhouse production, and whoever the distributor is, whether that be Universal or whoever, they're just going to have to be upfront and everyone's going to know. You're not going to fool everyone again. Now, that all said, how do they move forward with a new Blair Witch Project? Like, what is going to be the story? Because you're not going to convince us that you found this footage out in the woods. So I guess to me, the best way to really do this is to move into 2026, right? If this were to happen in today's day and age, what would be the found footage? The best way to do that is with today's technology, and that's going to be iPhones and Androids and that type of thing, and short form media. So TikTok videos, Instagram Reels, and Facebook Shorts and YouTube Shorts, that type of thing. I think that's going to be the story that they use. They're going to basically say that, these YouTubers were out there and recording, TikToks and doing live streams, and they're going to basically edit all this footage together to say, here's what we found, and this is what they were up to, and this is how they came across the Blair Witch and whatever. At the end of the day, the campaign is just not going to work the way that it did in 1999. They really fooled everyone in the country and everyone in the world, really. I mean, myself included. I was much younger. Like, I really believed that there were these missing teenagers. And they found this footage and put it in theaters. And I remember seeing all of the sci-fi, documentaries. I remember seeing the missing persons posters and that type of stuff that were circulating online. It even popped up as newscasts once in a while. Like, I remember falling for that back then. You're never going to fool anyone today with that type of thing. I mean, we have Google, we have Instagram, we have DuckDuckGo, all the different browsers and social media. The actors will, you'll be able to find the actors in a heartbeat. Back then, the actors were actually hiding even from their own families. Some of them, their own families believed that they were missing. Like, this thing borderline probably lawsuits. Like, I'm surprised there were no lawsuits that came out of this. The reality is that in 2026, that type of campaign just will not work. To me, there's no marketing campaign that you can do that's going to fool everyone into the missing teenager thing. So that said, what do you guys think? Are you looking forward to a new Blair Witch Project? How do you think that they're going to approach the marketing? How do you think they're going to approach the actual story and the technology? Let me know in the comments. And of course, hit the subscribe button.